Okay, but so we start directly. I mean, we all know that the energy system and the structure of the system has to change a lot in the upcoming years, and that requires a huge amount of investment. So this panel is supposed to be to give you a great overview what's happening currently on the market when it comes to energy finance and energy investment. And I'm very, very happy that we have representatives on stage with a very, very different professional background. So first of all, let me introduce to you our panelists. We have Hyung-Ja de Zeeuw. I tried to work on that a couple of times. I messed it up, I can see. She's Senior Energy Transition Specialist, Hydrogen Executive Director at RaboResearch, Rabobank from the Netherlands. Pleasure to have you here. We have Maria Stefanidou. She's Managing Director at Mounting Systems. Pleasure to have you. Ifeoma Malo, CEO and founder of Clean Technology Hub, all the way from Nigeria. Pleasure to have you. She has the shortest travel. Mathilda Götz, Senior Consultant Business Development, New and Green Tech from Munich Re. Pleasure to have you. And Bärbel Freyer, Chief Technical Officer at the Energy Service Center of the Association of Ghana Industries. Pleasure to have you here as well. And I know for each and every one of you, this is a very special day because you're part of this panel, but I also know that this is a very, very special day for Jung, as it's your birthday. So we're gonna sing now for Jung. We can make it. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, dear Jung. Happy birthday to you. Jung, once again, thank you very much for bringing, for coming here to Munich on that very, very special day for you. And as you are having, as you're celebrating your birthday today, you get the first question. That's my present for you today. So Jung, you've been working in the finance sector for over 20 years now, so lots of experience here. How would you describe the current trends in green energy financing and investment, and were there any specific milestones in the financial sector that have been achieved to incentivize more investment in renewable energy? The current situation, and have there been any milestones?
Well, thank you first of all for singing for me. That's the first for me that so many people sing happy birthday. So thanks a lot for that. You made my day already. Indeed, Susanne, I've been working in the financial sector over 20 years now, and I've seen a lot of change. I mean, when I started back then, actually I worked on the trading floor, which is also very male-dominated environment, and I think even today it's very male-dominated still. And back then it was a lot about return on investment, return on capital. Nobody cared about renewable investments, basically. I think you were a believer if you would invest specifically in renewables. It was not something that was on our radar, to be honest. Back then already, I do know, I worked for a different bank than today. Today I work for Rabobank. But Rabobank was actually one of the first banks that invested in renewables, particularly offshore wind. And because we started back then with all the risks and all the unknowns, today we know everything, and it's like we are a top 10 player, I think, in renewable investing today worldwide. So we learned from that. And I think if you look at the landscape today, it's changed a lot. I think it's the level playing field is not level. It's a very complex, regulated sector. But I think one thing that changed for sure is the attitude towards renewable energy investing. Mm-hmm. Back then, I think the adagium was greed is good. I think, like Gordon Gekko said in Wall Street. I think today it's more green is good. And I think even today, I would like to make a difference between three kinds of players. I think there's the people that make things happen, like Rabobank. We are one of the pioneers. I think there's banks that watch things happen, and then there's the banks that wonder what happened. And I guess you don't want to belong to the last category, and if you belong to the last category, we've basically given up on you. We don't want to talk to you. But no, it's absolutely, green is good. But you were also talking about what actually were kind of benchmarks or catalysts for this change. And I think one of the biggest catalysts, at least in the Netherlands, has been the fact that there has been a ruling as well against Shell. I don't know if you're all aware of this, but Shell was in court together with Milieudefensie, which is one of the green activist parties. And they actually sued Shell for basically their emissions that they are creating. And the Dutch judge actually in the end judged that, or ruled that it was indeed that Shell should do something about this. Scope 1, Scope 2, and Scope 3 if they could. And this was really a wake-up call for corporate, for all corporates in the Netherlands and also for Rabobank, I think. I think more in general in Europe. Another one, and I also noticed this in the bank, is of course the invasion in Ukraine. We suddenly realized, even the ones that were bashers or skeptics, that indeed we need to get rid of this gas and we need to invest in renewables.
Absolutely, absolutely. Maria, you're agreeing on that. And yes, almost the same amount of experience. 15 years we are talking about now that you've been working in several positions in the solar sector, and now you're managing director at Mountain Systems. Can you describe the financial and the investment situation in the solar, in the PV sector in Germany in the same amount of time, let's say 10 to 15 years back?
Okay.
How is the situation?
Can you hear me?
Yes,
okay.
We can hear you perfectly.
So I have to go back, you said 10, 15 years ago, where Germany started first attempts to recover from the booms before. So there was a boom in solar with a feed-in tariff, so like an instrument of marketing to make aware of solar business and solar environment. And this is where I started. I gave up my job as a teacher and was invited to an interview and I've been asked if I would like to join, and I said, no way, it's too chaotic. This was my starting point with the first approach to solar. And yes, then I was convinced by friends who also started in this sector, and I said, okay, I will just try it and see what is going to happen. So my perception on this topic was, I was in the middle of a boom. Everybody was, it was like in euphoria. Solar system, certificate, Germany, money, business, parties. It was incredible. And then suddenly, boom, crash. Everything collapsed. So this is how I remember the solar business or the solar environment in Germany. But for me, it was too late to say, I will give up now. I was convinced that solar, our sun, will replace everything else, any other energy source. So this was my conviction. I thought I would just try to keep up. And a lot of people started, of course, laughing on the industry. As you said, it was not really a serious sector anymore. And however, I felt that Europe, I'm just talking about Europe and especially Germany, tried somehow new incentives, and step by step investments came, and people started not to think only about feed-in tariff and making money, but just to understand, what does it mean for us? What does it mean to generate to generate electricity? And then step by step, investors came in after this big crash, of course, and the collapse. Investors, nothing to do with solar, started investing and buying companies which went bust, just cheap business, just waiting for something, for a next boom maybe. And we continued. In the company I was working, I continued. I changed a lot of roles, always trying to teach, to educate, to make people understand what we are working for. And then, step by step, I saw, media were writing a lot of crap as well. But I just observed Germany, improving. I remember the first country in solar and specialists was France, and it was a pioneer. Then Germany replaced France, and from that moment, we can see the development of Germany. It's amazing. Of course, media and lobbyists start to make, to damage the reputation, but it did not work because we were talking in the media about, we call it 50 gigawatt Deckel, and what will come then, and tragic, and a lot of nice or bad stories about solar, but it does not work because people are aware in Germany about solar now. And it works. And just in combination with us, maybe later I will explain a little bit the combination or how women or how we developed within our company in connection to solar. Yeah, so I mean, at the moment we have not a boom, just it's established somehow. The starting point of solar in Germany and in other countries is established, the starting point. The sector is not established still, not in Germany and elsewhere, but at least the starting point, and also the starting point of women working in this sector. But we are only at the starting point. So I'm very realistic, not pessimistic, but realistic.
Absolutely. Let's do that very, very quick in 1 minute. Just how did you finance yourself? You said there was like a big boom and then there was a crash. So how did you finance yourself over the years?
Yes, I was, and I'm the classic example of when I changed the company, because the company I was working for also and decided to liquidate and to reopen. And I thought, no, I'm not going to go this way. I will just write a business concept. I wrote a concept. And then the classic situation, of course, I was working in sales. I've been asked by my current employee to join. And if I was prepared to go to Berlin. And I said, no, I will stay in Cologne. If you want, here is a business concept, how I think solar will work in this company. And the company, I mean, 99.9% in the management men. Skeptical, but without alternatives, they accepted it. So we belong to a big investor, nothing to do with solar, yeah, in real estates, restructuring cities in Germany. Yeah, so that's where we come from, or where the investor comes from. And then I tried to convince them that solar is also good in business. And then step by step, the first sentences I heard were, oh, Frau Stefanidou, yeah, nice colors, nice pictures, but who knows? And then I tried to convince them by building up the company and showing them that it's worth it to invest. And it was worth it because we have an increase of 300% in the company, and investment is at the moment not a problem.
Absolutely.
So, and a lot of other stories, I guess, similar stories must have happened, because we wouldn't be there where we are at the moment. And also competitors have this, not the same, but similar development.
Okay. Yeah, as you can see, when you live in Cologne or in Munich, you're never going to Berlin. That's, I absolutely agree on that.
I mean, it's nice. It's nice, to be honest.
It is. It's a nice city. Lots of things going on there. Ifeoma, you have a lot of experience as well. You've occupied many positions in the renewable energy sector, from consultant to the minister, to power for all, to organize new policy and strategy design. You are the perfect person for us to describe the landscape of renewable energy investment in Nigeria, let's say again, in the past 10 to 15 years.
Thank you, and thank you for having me. It's so great to see a lot of women in the room talking about solar. I think, I'll approach the question more broadly, looking at the landscape across sub-Saharan Africa, and maybe using a few Nigerian examples. When I came into this sector, I think about 12 years ago now, first of all, it was very male-dominated. If you were a woman and you were in this sector, you felt like you were in a locker room sometimes. The kind of projects that were, or the kind of financing that was being talked about was way above the type of financing that women could access generally in sub-Saharan Africa. And so what has happened is we have gone from, and then a few projects started, test use case, a few mini grids started here and there. They were successful. I think a turning point also was the Paris Agreement, where countries were supposed to make commitments to reduce their emissions. And so African countries, a lot of us for the first time started to take a lot of the emission industries a lot more seriously and looking at how to decarbonize. The other factor that played a role is the fact that a lot of African countries are still energy poor. So we have a huge energy deficit. In my country, Nigeria, we still have about 55% of the population still unelectrified. And of that 55%, about 92% of that 55% is rural. And then if you also understand that Africa is still very rural in terms of our population. There's a huge population that still lives in very rural communities and don't have electricity. Some have never seen electricity. Then you understand the magnitude of the problem. So there were three things that were happening. There was a global move to decarbonize. There was an awareness of the fact that we cannot grow as a continent, as a country in Nigeria, if we do not have energy, if we do not have electricity. And then there was the proof of case to show that you can actually electrify communities and sub-communities using solar electricity. You don't have to wait for the grid. So these three factors sort of collided. And then what you had was investors and donors and philanthropy looking at how to scale this up. When I first came into the sector, 98% of the funding that was coming into the continent for renewable energy projects were donor funds. That has moved because we're now seeing a lot more equity and debt. We're now seeing more people being able to access financing. And we're now seeing more projects that have different business models that are able to attract impact investments. And that has created this whole renewal around renewable energy across the board. The most popular being solar. So what we have now is that we have about 70 to 75% grant funding coming in, and the rest of it is now equity and debt. What we want to see is where we get it to a 50-50 parity, and because it's a poor continent, we cannot just have it be commercial solar because we're still electrifying communities that do not have the money to build commercial type solars and make them profitable. So there has to be that parity. And in my role, I used to work for the Nigerian government with the Minister of Power. One of the things that has helped catalyze financing is a lot of the policies and regulations. We have a mini-grid regulation that makes it easy for mini-grid investors to want to come in. That we were the first to have the mini-grid regulation, but we've seen other countries on the continent take that up. What that does is that it creates investor confidence. We've also seen that there's a lot more funding coming in from impact donors. And this is what has really helped women get into the sector. I see my sister here, Damilola, who's one of our big solar installers in Nigeria. But without the kind of funding and patient capital that impact investing brings in, it'll be very difficult for women to access financing simply because some of the barriers that are put by commercial investors or commercial financiers are too high and too steep for women to meet. In some of the places where they're asking for collateral for loans, for instance, they're asking you for land documents, and they're asking you for things that are going to be very difficult for you to be able to obtain. So what impact investing does is that it completely reduces those barriers, and then it makes it easier for women to be able to take commercial type lending and build commercially viable businesses. It is very difficult to build a commercial viable business if you're just on grants and loan, because once the grants run off or are finished, then what? How are you able to sustain the business beyond that? So I'll round up by saying this, to say that we are seeing still, despite the switch in the financing percentages, a lot more of the financing is coming from global institutions, international financing. We want to see more local investors also take the chance on renewable energy projects across Africa, especially in Nigeria. And we're already trying to work out models and toolbox to make that happen. We also want to see more investment in women-owned and women-led businesses, especially when it comes to the renewable energy sector. And we're trying to convince investors that, women are a good bet when you're doing this sort of investments. They pay. We always repay our loans and our debts, don't we? And so it's easier to do long-term business with us. You just have to have patient capital to make sure that you're giving us enough time to recoup your funding. Thank you.
Ifeoma, thank you. Thank you for sharing all these insights on the Nigerian market with us, and that's what I really love about that panel. We have so many different perspectives here, and we're not only changing the country, we're also changing the industry now, coming to the part of insurance. Mathilda, I want to ask the next question to you. Munich Re is a provider of a reinsurance, a primary insurance and risk management solutions. So how can Munich Re and its innovative green tech solution unit de-risk investment decisions in green technologies? How can you help?
Yeah, hello everyone. Before I answer your question, Susanne, I'm really impressed by this kind of sisterhood spirit I can experience in this room. I guess as all the women are here, there are hardly any left over there at the fair. So very happy to be here. And you might be wondering, what is insurance bringing to the table? We are kind of the strange beast here, so maybe let me explain a bit. I think we all have the same vision of a net zero world, and we all want to turn the energy transition into a sustainable and successful business model. And we need huge investments. I've read a number of 131 trillion euro until 2050 to achieve the net zero goals. But the problem is that the investors are shying away from these investments because some of the technologies are not proven. They are innovative. There is not a track record. And how can we help from an insurance perspective? We can build up the trust and the performance of these innovative technologies. And this, in the end, helps the investors. So maybe I can give you a little example. If you imagine you are a manufacturer of solar panels and you want to get a performance guarantee insurance for your panels, then you reach out to Munich Re, and before we can give you this cover, we have to make a very tough technical due diligence. This sounds a bit cruel, but it's really important. So actually we go to your factory, we inspect the production process, we inspect your bill of material, we check how your degradation of your modules is, and after you have passed this technical due diligence, you are entitled to get our cover. What does it mean for you as a manufacturer? It helps you to convince your customers about the quality of your panels. And at the same time, it makes your panels bankable. So what does bankability mean? It means that you can convince investors to invest into your panels, because the investors, they have the proof that the quality is outstanding. They have the proof that even if you go bankrupt, they are still covered. And in the end, it's all about the ROI. So they want to have a long-term profitable business. And what I just shared, what we do with PV, and by the way, we've been doing that for the last 14 years, we also do with all the other technologies. So basically green hydrogen, energy storage, offshore wind, circular economy, e-mobility, yeah, you name them all. And just to give you a couple of numbers, we have 90 projects covered in 80 different countries. And at the moment we have 55 gigawatts covered. And just to give you a comparison, this is about the solar power which is produced in 1 year in Germany.
Great, that's really awesome. Thank you very much for sharing these numbers with us. And as I asked everybody about the past 10 years, I would hand that question to you as well. Maybe you can describe from an insurance perspective the last decade. How was it in terms of enabling the energy transition?
Yeah. Happy to do so. It was very similar as Maria already explained. It was very troublesome. There was a boom, then there was a crash. And we've seen in our numbers that 50% of all the solar panel manufacturers disappeared from the market, either by bankruptcy or they were mergers. So there was a big shift. On the other hand, we also see that there is a penetration level of renewable industries, renewable energies in different countries, which is kind of stuck between 20 or 30%. And in my opinion, it has been stuck for a couple of years. So how can we reach these 100% of renewable energy? And I think the war in Ukraine, as terrible as it is, it was a wake-up call, because people realized that we don't want to be dependent on fossil fuels, on political questionable energy sources. There was a big shift in mindset. And there are also new regulations. For example, there is this Inflation Reduction Act in the US, and this is a great booster for the domestic solar, but also all the other energies in the US. There's the EEG law 2023 in Germany. This is also a big boost. So we see that there is a lot of development. What we also see, and this would be the last point, I still see the silos. And this is also reflected at the fair. So you have one hall for PV, you have one hall for energy storage, you have maybe another one for e-mobility. But what we are missing is this interconnectivity, because you need to combine all these different technologies. And you need to achieve this 24/7 availability, because the wind is not always blowing, the sun is not always shining. So you need energy storage, you need green hydrogen. This can also balance these fluctuations. And if you bring all the different players together, the different technologies, then I think it's the only way to reach these 100%.
Absolutely. And maybe Bärbel, you can add on that. You're bringing so much experience to that stage as well. And exactly what Mathilda just mentioned, we see that the trend in renewable energy investment seems to be concentrated on specific areas and also on specific technologies. That also means that we are leaving other areas and other technologies right behind. So from your experience and all these years of experience you have, how important is international and also public finance when it comes to cooperation, but also when it comes to development of new innovations?
Yeah, thank you. Good morning, everybody, or good afternoon already, I don't know. Yeah, thanks for the question. Yeah, okay, I also have to go. Should I also go back 10 years,
yes,
but
please,
not in Ghana?
If you want to.
But I can't go back, but I can go back in, a little bit in the energy history of Ghana now from that viewpoint. It is in 2015 there was a big blackout over the whole country. Ghana, the country had been struggling before, and that was called the doomsor. That means the overall. Everything is dark. The country was in darkness, so the government, in a sort of a bit of a panic situation, decided to take a lot of money into the hand and get independent power producers and sign contracts for 25 years on a fixed rate for electricity supply with fossil fuels. So the country is sort of a bit in a trap currently. They get a lot of energy from these independent power suppliers at a fixed rate, and at the same time has committed itself in the recent years to increase the renewable energy share of the whole electricity of 10%, which is not really high with regards to 90% fossil fuels. So It is therefore, if you look at it, Ghana has nearly constant power supply. There are some outages for some hours. There is only it's about 93% electricity coverage in the country, so it's quite wide. There are some pockets which do not have energy. So it's a little bit of a hard work in entering there. Especially that the government feels there's a problem also in selling the electricity provided already. And there's also a little bit of too much electricity still available. So for the last 3.5 years, the center, our energy service center, we are at the Association of Ghana Industries, which is the largest industry association in Ghana with about 1,500 to 1,800 members. And they are committed, they have committed themselves, they said, okay, we would like to get more information to the industry and have an energy service center working as a sort of honest broker. So the energy service center does not sell projects or solar panels, but we are giving information on energy audits, how we carry out energy audits, independent energy audits, feasibility studies for solar. We train people, we train service provider in the sector, we do trainings within the industry for staff, we do energy management systems, information on this. So we have a whole portfolio of trainings developed. We do short one-day services like trainings like when we talk about insurances. We have even trainings who talk about warranty and guarantee, because these are things which are not really known to everybody. People buy panels, they don't know that they have a long-term warranty. And even if the service provider breaks down and is no more available, that they still have some certain rights. So we are trying to address all topics in the sector. So the recent 3.5 years now, we have been working a lot with the company, with the large industry, and it always came to the point, fine, we have been training, we have done trainings, we have done the energy audits, we have done the feasibility studies. So now, when it comes to investment, it stops. So there is hardly investment. So if you talk to the companies, they will tell you they don't have the money because they are considering that any investment has to be from their working capital. They cannot take up a loan. Loans, interest rates are ranging between 35% and 50%. Interest rate, so it is unachievable. You can't take up a loan for several years. So there are international financing coming in, but due to the fact that they can't circumvent the local banks, they have to work with the local banks. And at the end of the day, the local bank gets the amount of money and they have to take the risk. So that is what they tell you. They tell, okay, we have the dollars, we can give loans for dollar loans, we can give Ghana city loans, local currency loans, but sorry, the dollar loans can go for 10% or 7 or 12% or 15%, but the Ghana city loans go for 35%, up to 50% in some other local areas. So, yeah, that is not achievable, and many companies do not have the foreign currency coming in. On top of it, last year was a big economic breakdown. There was an economic crash. The inflation rate raised up to 45%. So companies who had, for example, local currency loans or dollar loans had to get the local currency, change it into dollars, which was a doubling of the money they had to pay back. So it is just like you can't project, you don't know, how can you take a loan even for 3 years? And that was even a company said that each company, when you talk to them, they won't even take a loan longer than 3 years because that's the time they can project. So I think we're having a real problem here. That is the big bottleneck. So, but on the other hand, there are some other upsprings of alternatives coming up. So there's the crowdfunding platforms, you all know. It has been developed just in a few years. If I remember, I was also working in Nigeria. That was in I think it was in 2015 that we did a seminar on crowdfunding, and it was a totally new project, and it's just 8 years ago, and nowadays crowdfunding is everywhere, yeah? But of course, crowdfunding is also something where people have to have the interest. If you want to crowdfunding energy efficiency measures, nobody wants to do that because you can't see it really, yeah? It's like, then we have in the country, the PPAs, power purchase agreement, these were banned for until April this year. So now companies can come in, put an off-taker on their premises and buy the electricity from them. This is possible again, so they don't have to dive too deep into their pockets. And yeah, some lease-to-own project like with solar that people take off, put large solar fields and pay it off on the long run. So this is working, but also not really much. So we are also realizing that there's a lot of, when Maria says about we are starting, that's just the start in Germany. I don't know where we are currently. If Germany is just starting, that would mean we are, I don't know how many years behind, and I don't think that we can afford that, honestly. Of course, the industry in Ghana doesn't consider itself as being the large culprits when it comes to climate change. But I think we all have to understand that we are part of it, and even a little bit can help. So I believe there have to be. Okay, I'm not a banker, but I just see that the whole area, banking area in Ghana, I think it's similar in other African countries. There must be in the international funding. There is a very big need for innovative ideas. Yeah, so it's like the crowdfunding was an innovative idea which tackles the smaller ones, but if it comes to larger investments, there has to be money, which has to be, as Ifeoma says, it has to come at a secure rate where companies can really plan, and it has to be outside of an economic ups and downs of these countries.
Many additional problems that you don't obviously see in the first minute. Before we deep dive too much, because time is absolutely running, let's stop on looking back. Let's looking into the future, what has to change, what has to happen. And Ifeoma, I would like to start with you and the Green Technology Hub, which is a hybrid hub. Maybe you can say just in a minute, what is this hub all about? What are you doing? And what kind of investments are you looking for? What kind of investments do you need? And what can you maybe do to be more attractive for investors?
Okay, so thank you again. Clean Tech Hub, we're a hybrid hub, and we're focused on three things. We're focused on energy access, and within energy access, we're a systems orchestrator, and we're also a convener. You know, we have convening powers, bringing a lot of the mini-grids, microgrids, standalone home solar system developers and distributors together. We helped to form the Renewable Energy Association in Nigeria. And then we're also working with specific companies to go into communities and do projects. We do everything except installations, right? So we would do demand simulation, customer enumeration. We provide research. We're working with the Ramon Institute to provide a lot of feasibility studies and tools that can help solar installers and mini-grid developers make the right decisions around sizing, around financing as well. We also work across climate change, working with frontline communities that are affected by climate issues and helping them to transition. You know, the whole energy transition debate is happening. A lot of these communities feel the impact. They are not the ones who are the biggest emitters, but they feel the frontline impacts. So helping them across with this energy transition to a much more clean and renewable energy. And then lastly, we do something very unique, and if you give me 2 minutes, I'll tell the story. We also do what we call sustainable entrepreneurship, and it's focused mainly on women. And we're trying to also create a fund that would help this project take off. So and I'm going to anonymize the story because there might be some people in the room who know the person I'm talking about. We were working in a community trying to help with installing a mini-grid when we ran into a woman who had been a victim of domestic violence. We met her at the primary healthcare center that was going to be part of the households and businesses that were going to be electrified. When we started talking to her, it turned out that, you know, this is a reoccurrence in her home. It's a family that has 2 wives, and she being the most senior wife and was always agitating to have the kids go to school. It led to tension and friction, and she was always beaten. Now, to fast forward to the story, one of the things we asked her after helping her to get that medical care was, what can you do to also earn income? And she told us that she could make a couple of the local drinks that were unique to that particular part of the country. And then, but she said it wasn't viable because, you know, the drinks are always hot, and it's always so hot and humid in that particular community, and so nobody would buy them. So we gifted her a solar cooler, a solar cool box to use to cool those drinks. And then what we did also was to teach her the rudiments of a business, of how to run a sustainable business. What is a profit and loss? What is your turnover? How do you calculate your income at the end of the month? How do you budget? Simple, basic entrepreneurship skills. Well, I'm happy to say that Our Lady is an employer of labor. She employs 15 other women. She has 23 cool boxes. And she's the one who has helped us develop what we call the Community Business School, where we're teaching other women like her to start up micro businesses and give them seed funding that can help them take it along. The only criteria is that you must be using a renewable energy equipment to run this business, but we need to put funding to help this sort of businesses scale. We're always focused on the big stuff, and I think those things are important. But there are lots of communities, mainly run by women, that are getting left behind. So how are we bringing these frontline communities to be part of the energy access conversation, part of the energy transition conversations? How do we empower them with skills? And how do we teach them to use the systems that are being developed to run sustainable businesses, to feed their families, and live a wholesome life? So when we get asked what we do at Clean Tech Hub, we do the big things, but these are the people that matter. And if I urge you today, I'm going to be following a lot of these women to help put the fund together. It's don't forget the people who are being left behind. Thank you.
Ifeoma, thank you. What a great example to help people in long term, which is much more important than just in short term. Mathilda, from a very different perspective now, the insurance is coming back. What's your experience with with offering your solution for the different green energy technologies, and what's coming up next?
Yeah. As a global player, Munich Re also invests itself in these renewable energies. We have 2.4 billion in renewable energies, and we have 1.5 billion in sustainable managed forests. So basically we're one of the biggest owners of woods and forests in the world. So we have kind of this big picture, and I think it's really exciting to have like these small approaches but also the big ones, and to combine them at some point. And as I said before, if you have the big pictures, you also need to bring all the different players to the table. And that's why we partner with universities to better understand the technologies, to better understand the new developments. We partner with so-called TIC companies, testing and inspection companies. VDE is one of our partners, or TÜV Süd, or Sinovoltaics, and a Chinese testing company. And we also, of course, we work together with the lenders, the banks, the investors. But we also want to work together with different communities. And this brings me to what we can do as a company to also kind of enable and to empower women. We hire experts for all these different technologies because we really want to understand the different green technologies. And I can give you one example. We have a new colleague, and she's sitting here. It's Katrin Ebert, and she just did her PhD in electrochemistry. And we are so happy to have her on board, because we also experience that usually all the technology people are male-dominated, and it's just great to have diverse teams. And this would also be like a call to action, because we are constantly developing new offerings. So we started with PV 15 or 14 years ago, then we did offshore wind, all the other technologies. And only last year we launched a new performance guarantee insurance for green hydrogen. Green hydrogen has been around for a long time, but it never was kind of this threshold to being really a mature technology, and that is really accepted, and then people, and especially investors, trust the technology. And now we've launched the product called HiSure, and we see there's a huge demand. And this would be my call to action. So if you want to exchange with us, because we're constantly looking for partners, for people to exchange, please reach out to us. And really, I'm a big believer of this community approach. And on the other hand, as I haven't mentioned something about gender that much, I've been around in this business for more than 20 years now, and I would also love to share some insights, some key learnings. So please feel free to reach out to me to further discuss this.
Thank you very much, Mathilda. And of course, we love exchanging ideas also on that stage. So whenever you have maybe a question or something you want to add, feel free to just stand up and raise your hand. Otherwise, we have another 10 minutes at the very end of this panel where you can address your questions to our panelists. Back to Hyung, back to you, back to Rabobank, and back to clean hydrogen. What are the prospects for this technology in terms of investment? And how does your banking for energy strategy support the development of green hydrogen? Maybe maybe you can tell us a bit more about that.
Yeah, so green hydrogen is an incredibly complex matter. I think not just from the technology side. I think we just heard that we need insurance for that. That's great. The technology is proven, but the business case is not. And that's where usually when we talk about green hydrogen in finance, we deal with risks that we don't understand, because basically banks are willing to finance large amounts of debt, because banks finance debt, not equity. If we understand the business case, if we know how the cash flows, what the cash flows are, and for example, with wind, offshore wind, we now know for 20 years more that where the risks are, what kind of cash flows we can expect. Of course, the funny thing here is that with hydrogen, we know we need it. Everybody knows we need it. But could you give me, for the coming 20 years, a cash flow profile? No.
No one does.
Unfortunately not. So there we have a problem. And of course then, if there are subsidies financing, let's say the capex, so let's say the machine itself, that's great. But what we actually need is OPEX. So we need to finance, let's say, the cash flows that come in the future. And at that respect, basically what we need is an off-taker that can guarantee in a contract we will off-take so many kilograms for the coming 10 years. That's what we'd like to see for this price or this volume. The H2 Global program in that respect is great here in Germany, because it takes away that kind of gap that we have between what off-takers are willing to sign, the kind of contracts, and the kind of contracts that we banks would like to see. So that's a great initiative, and that's one way to help the green hydrogen projects forward. Because until now, let's not forget, the European Commission has said we need 75 billion euros, more or less, just for electrolyzers only. What we know until now, we have 2 electrolyzers in Europe running. There's one operational here in Germany, 10 megawatts. I think Shell is involved, and there's one in Spain for 20 megawatt. And there Iberdrola is involved. But that's tiny. I mean, if we're looking at gigawatts, many gigawatts that we need. So as Rabobank, we need, first of all, we need the knowledge. So I'm the knowledge. We need to understand the risks. We need to have the H2 Global program so that we can bridge that gap. We need the insurers to make sure that they ensure that they guarantee the projects, or that they guarantee the technologies, because that's a very big part of project finance, guarantees and warranties. But we also need a bank that needs to take a leap of faith. And I guess that's where we should take the next step. And actually, I'm very proud to be able to announce that actually we did have one project now, which is not an electrolyzer, but it's actually a ship that runs on a fuel cell, and it runs on green hydrogen. It should be green, but it's not green according to the European Delegated Act.
Green.
It's kind of green, but it's not entirely green, because here in Europe we're very strict on what we call green. But actually, what I really like about this is that we have this inland shipping, so it's for inland shipping. It has a fuel cell, and it was actually built in a way that we could refurbish the ship. So as an existing ship, refurbished with a fuel cell, and then the refueling is with a container. So it's basically green hydrogen, green low carbon hydrogen goes in with the container. So it's a unit that you can actually replace and place. So it's really quick to reload or refuel, and it's all along the Rhine. So there's a corridor of refueling stations that goes with it. Also there, Rabobank was involved. And this ship, what is really nice about it is that the contractor here was actually Nike, so the sportswear company. And they decided to basically hire the ship for their sportswear. And that actually is what pulls the business case through, because they say we are prepared, or our clients in the end are prepared to pay, let's say, 10 cents extra per pair of sneakers, is what it actually costs. So the shipper does not run the risk. It's actually Nike that runs the risk. And we as a bank then are happy to finance this. And the other thing I really like about this project is the fact that I'm not convinced or sure whether hydrogen would be the fuel for inland shipping in the future. It could be ammonia, it could be methanol. Maybe it's a battery, I don't know. But what I like about this project is the technology is available now. And 2, if you have an existing ship and you want to green your ship now, you can do it by refurbishing it. And that sort of accelerates the energy transition.
I really like that example. I mean, it's a first step. It's something that I'm always saying, we can't wait for everything to be perfect before we start. So otherwise we're going to wait forever and ever and ever. So I really like that example. Thank you very much for sharing it with us. And Mathilda, you want to add something here?
Yeah, I just wanted to add one thing to Jung's. So because you talked about risk of green hydrogen and that the business model is not yet there. So I'm really happy to collaborate on this point, because this is kind of in the DNA of an insurance, to anticipate the risk, to put a price tag on the risk, what financial impact there could be, and then have some risk management.
Awesome. That's about bringing people together, what I just mentioned at the very beginning of this congress. Bärbel, back to you. As you just mentioned, the whole investment situation, the first question round a lot. Maybe you can just sum it up, 1 or 2 sentences. What do you need in terms of investment in Ghana? You just mentioned you're not even at the beginning, you're somewhere before it. Exactly. And additionally, because it's a topic of the congress, what role does women empowerment in the energy transition play in Ghana?
The role they play, I would say, as of now, 0. There is no role they play in the energy transition. So it's we've been discussing that before I came. We discussed it with a team which are only men, and the management of the organization are only men. And in the management meeting, I'm the only woman. So it's like as I heard from my colleagues here. So the role is, there is no specific role. I think we have to define a role. There is a role, there's the Renewable Energy Master Plan. Ghana is in existence, and I checked through, with a search mode, women. The word woman comes up once in a while, and it comes up like they have to be supported, yes, and they have to be put into a decision-maker position, all the things we all know. And I would like to, when I was reading through it, I was just thinking, okay, the master plan ends, the idea is 2030. I would like to make a midterm review and to look at what happened there in the sector. We are, I would say, there are quite a larger number of female students who are studying engineering now, coming from the educational part, but they somehow seem to disappear. It's along the way. They are no more there where the jobs are. So just simply, we had a vacancy. I was looking for a renewable energy expert, and there was not a single woman applying for it. And I've got a lot of applications, and it's not that there are jobs all over. So I was also surprised. So I think we have to really start working on it. I must confess, when I'm reading through it, I'm getting more and more. Sometimes you just forget about where you are, or who you are, and you just think, okay, maybe I should remind myself, be a bit more also gender focused in this matter. So I think there are what I've started. I also discussed with my colleagues. We're here at the Intersolar today. We came with a small delegation from Ghana, and one of our companies, they has started a small NGO. It's called Wire, and I was just thinking, so women in renewable energies, and I think it's a startup, and I was just thinking, okay, maybe we start working with them, doing some trainings or getting a bit more into the topic. So I must say I've not been the best example for women in renewable energy in Ghana, maybe because of my work, but I noticed it, of course, and I think we can do much more there. We have also a department at the AGI, at the Association of Ghana Industries, which are women in business, so women in business, but it's not women in energy. And I think we have to lift it up to a certain level that it becomes more vocal also. And that is somehow, it's been handled like a little pet project. Usually the women projects are like the women and the children. And it's something like, it all comes together in one sentence. Yeah, so it's not that. It's it's also reading through this master plan. It's always the women and the children have to be taken care of, and I think that is something we shouldn't write women there anymore. It should be a normal thing.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so
absolutely agree on that.
So I said it, and yes, I wrote it yesterday evening to Serafina.
Serafina, it's like showing that we need to finish. We need to finish.
I will put more effort in that. I promise now to get this more into the focus, of course, in the scope of my work. Yeah.
We have incredible 30 seconds for your question. Yeah, just go to the microphone, please.
Hello, everyone. My name is Iman Berhi, and I'm part of Aqua Power, which is a independent power producer.
You can leave it in.
It's too high for me. Okay. An independent power producer in the Middle East. And I just wanted to actually answer Ms. Hyung-Ja about green hydrogen. Gigawatt scale projects actually exist. There's one that have been funded now in Neom City, in KSA, done by Aqua Power, Air Products, and Neom Company. Air Products, American company, Aqua Power Saudi, and Neom, which is the Neom City company. And it's a 2.2 gigawatt electrolyzer, producing 1.2 million ton per annum of ammonia, which is pretty huge for the industry. We have secured $6.8 billion of funding from 25 banks, DFIs, commercial banks, IFIs, and some of them are actually from Europe. So the idea that hydrogen is still in the future, for me, is not true. There are a lot of people who are working on this. I'm part of the business development team working on green hydrogen in Aqua Power. We are developing 10 projects. Some of them are gigawatt scale. And this is a reality now. So we have a project that has already been funded and is now under construction. And there are other projects coming in the region. Of course, it's not the case in Europe. Europe is a bit behind in terms of structuring of projects. But in the Middle East and in Asia, this is a reality now. China is going to build tens of gigawatts of electrolyzers in the coming years. And this is just to say, also for women, there are a lot of women working in green hydrogen already. I'm part of the project management team who developed NEOM and other projects now. We have a lot of technical people working on this. So be encouraged to look at this a bit more positively. Ammonia, green ammonia, and this is a real green hydrogen project, 0% CO2. So this is an actual project that I would like you all to learn about. It's the NEOM Green Hydrogen Project. It's the first one that is gigawatt scale in the world. Other projects are coming. I'm personally developing 2 of them. I cannot talk more about them in details, but other projects are going to come, and I really invite all women to start looking into this field. It's very interesting. It's very stimulating industry, and yeah, I just wanted to correct that. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you very much for this additional information. Of course, each and every one of you feel free to get in touch with her during our lunchtime or our evening reception, so you will have plenty of time to talk and discuss on that later on. But for this round, I would like to close with you, Maria, and also give you the opportunity to look into the future a little bit at the company of Mounting System, but the whole sector of the energy sector in general. What do you think? What are your expectations? And are we equipped, or do we need more investment?
Okay, just time is running.
Yeah, the microphone, please.
Okay, time is running, and I need to run in 15 minutes. Yes, so I just collected all the information, which is really, everything is for me very familiar, especially when we talk about insurance. And my question is, the question is, are we ready? And I said we have a starting point in Germany and in Europe. I'm focused on Europe and especially in Germany. We have our homework. We have not a fairy tale anymore. It's the Green Deal. It's not a fairy tale. It used to be a fairy tale, but it's a real homework, and it's a commitment for everybody. For every country, we have homework, and there is money allocated. 300 billion euros are a lot of money to start with our homework, and it doesn't matter if it's a man or a woman, they have to start. For us women, it's a very good chance, I would say. You have to look into it very positively, as you said, because the industry is starting the establishment, and women are starting also to establish themselves in a business environment. Yeah, so there is a double chance: the sector and women work. So it's amazing. What do we need to do? Like we did it. I'm sitting here and looking to my colleagues, and I think I'm in a different planet because we are. I can admit we are a role model for this because in the company, being managing director finally after so many years, allowed me to hire a lot of women who are willed to work. Our head of marketing sitting there is a single mom with 4 kids, so it's big jobs. So just to mention this, we have a lot of examples where women are really not only qualified, willed. So we have in our stand here, we have more than 100 people staying there and saying, we want guys, girls, women, ladies, men, it doesn't matter. It was not easy to establish this game of man and woman in a job, but we are establishing also the sector. It's the double job that we have. We have the Green Deal, we have the money to do it, so now we have to create win-win situations for everybody, for investors, for employers, for employees. So if we create those win-win situations, so then there is a big chance to accelerate our demand, because there is a big demand, but as I said, money is allocated, we just need to know how to use it. Mm-hmm. Yeah, so, and to combine the forces of a man and a woman, the creative part, the technical part, everything. We can really do a great job if we put everything together. What do we need is knowledge and also combine the sectors, I mean the different areas, as you said, because manufacturing of racking systems, what we are doing, is a completely different story than produce a panel. It's another world. I don't know how to sell a panel. I just knew how to sell my racking system. So, and we are staying in different locations here, areas, so we are completely separated. We need to start to make alliances. Alliances between a man and a woman, a country and another country, and different companies. We need to come together. I'm a fan of, yeah, of course, women and men working together, and I believe in that. But just together, that's the point, just to make them together happy.
Absolutely. Thank you, Maria. No better closing words I could wish for. Thank you very much for that. And that gives us an incredible 4 minutes of time for questions from your side. Are there any questions? Please feel free to go to the microphone so we can hear you a bit better. And maybe you can very shortly introduce yourself.
Oh, I am.
Yeah, I think it's working.
I have some question to the Africans because we are talking here about financial, but I am a little worried about the. It's good.
Just go ahead. Yeah, we can hear you.
It's correct. Okay. The useful life of the microgrids. I don't know if you can explain me, answer me, but my question is about if the tariffs of the customers pay can repay the microgrids, or is necessary continue subsiding. Do you understand my question? No.
Not really, to be honest.
Not really.
I'm sorry.
You install a microgrid for a village, for a people, for a town, and you have to finance the installation. But then the people pay the tariffs. My question is if the tariffs paid are enough to maintain the installation.
Okay.
And the other question is about the function, how the microgrid you just have installed are working now. Do you have the necessary support, technical support of the providers? Because I am from Uruguay, South America, and I know that it's not easy to take the technical support by the enterprise in Europe. Financing and installing is good, is okay, but then we need the support, the technical support. This is my question.
Okay, I think I understand her question, and I think it's directed to me.
Yeah.
So that's a good question. You're talking about the different business models or operator models that can sustain a mini-grid in rural communities. So there isn't one single tariff. There is a range for the tariff, for the feed-in tariff for solar. An independent solar mini-grid developer would go into a community, and there is a whole series of negotiations that will be agreed on between that mini-grid developer, the Rural Electrification Agency, which is a government, quasi-government agency, and the villagers on what the tariff would be. And it's dependent on a lot of factors. It's dependent on the distance of the village, how remote it is. It's dependent on the size of the system. It's dependent on the ability of the village to pay, and it's dependent also on whether there are available off-takers. So is it a productive use community? Are there commercial activities going on there? So you could have one community charge 0.2% of a dollar as its feed-in tariff, and you can have others who are charging, I think, about up to 0.8% or even 0.12%, depending on, or 1.2%, depending on where, and how much they've put into their calculations of how viable this would be. So there isn't one feed-in tariff. That's the first answer to your question. It's all based on commercial negotiations. The other question you asked is on technical skills, and this is something that, I've been in Munich for the past 5 days, working with partners, German partners like the Romanian Institute and Microenergy. This is a consortium of organizations that are doing projects across Africa. So we're coming up with toolboxes, planning tools, feasibility things that can help with feasibility studies, things that can help with creating appropriate financing models for mini-grids, starting with Nigeria as a test case and spreading it across. Some of the money for this is coming from the German government itself. But what we're trying to do is create this model so that we can scale them up to other African countries. And what that does, part of what we're doing, is going into communities and actually bringing out people who we can sort of work with and train so that when we're building mini-grids or microgrids, that this can also be partly community-owned or sometimes community-led to ensure sustainability. And a lot of that involves training technical staff, people who can be front line or first line of defense if there's any need for maintenance. And we also insist that women are part of these conversations from the get-go. So we don't put them at the end. We don't just look at them as users. We put them through the whole planning chain of the work that we're doing.
Perfect. Ifeoma, thank you very much. Unfortunately, I have to close this panel now. I'm pretty sure there are many more questions here in the room, but in just a couple of minutes, we're going to have our lunchtime, so feel free to get in touch after that and use the lunchtime for face-to-face conversations here. Thank you very much for sharing all these insights on all the different markets and technologies with us. That was a great introduction for our Congress today. Thanks a lot to you.